My parents were 40 years older than me, so it was straight roots. Anytime I got in trouble, it was
straight roots,
bro. It was roots.
Is that a fair position to put him in, though?
What do you mean?
Like giving this dude the responsibility and the authority of keeping a roof over their heads and make sure they got food and everything every night, but saying they're not allowed to whoop them?
Well, first of all, that's not his responsibility. That's mine. My kids can always come stay with me. There's going to be a roof over their head regardless. So it's not that he's needed in that sense. And I would basically let him know, like, hey, I don't put my hands on my kids. So, if there comes down to an instance where you need to discipline them.
If you think parenting is hard, try being a step parent. If you think separating from your kids is tough, just wait until someone else is raising them. Point is, these situations are never easy. And none of us came in this world equipped with the intellectual capacity, mental fortitude, and enlightenment that it takes to deal with a blended family. Do you discipline your stepchild the way you would your biological kid? Do you tiptoe around certain issues because you feel that you'll be sidelined anyway and your voice wouldn't hold much weight? Does your partner even understand how hard you're trying? In today's conversation, we dive into all that. I'm your host, Stefan. Joining me today are two wise and experienced gentlemen, Jamon Elder and Ladre Gilbert. And of course, this conversation will be lackluster if not for the curiosity and brilliance of young single parent, Nick Pierre. Welcome to Manhood Matters. Let's get to it. Glad you guys are here, man. So, returning to the show, we have Nick. What's up, Nick?
What's going on?
Yeah, man. Mr. Barry White. What's going on, G? Glad you have you back, brother.
I'm glad to be back. I really appreciate you having me.
Yes, man. Thank you for being here, man. And we got Dre from the Barbershop episode who's back here today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Glad to be back, man. Thank you for having me.
Of course, brother. So this conversation is going to be about being a step parent. There's going to be two sides of it. One is having to navigate through that, if that's your situation, or how would you handle it? But the other side of it, what I want to talk to you guys about is possibly having your child being the stepchild to someone else. So that has its own challenges as well. What's your situation right now, Dre?
So I'm divorced, but I had an opportunity to be a step parent in an actual marriage. I've definitely, dated women with kids. So it's kind of like, but it's a different level when you're actually married.
Sure.
And so I think that first and foremost, as you develop that relationship with that child, it definitely emanates from the love that you have for his mother.
Yeah.
And then so you take the time and people say, like, hey, you have to treat this child the way that you treat your own child or love that child in the same way. And I think that as humans, that's a process, but it's a process that you have to be willing to, embark upon. Mm-hmm. And, I was willing to embark upon that. And so my kids live in Florida and I got married up here in Atlanta. I was like, man, I kind of feel guilty because I'm playing video games with this guy. And, we're, going he wants pizza and the pizza he wants is 3 miles away. In Atlanta, 3 miles, that's like an hour and a half. Right? So, but I really tried to give him the same energy I would give to my kids.
Yeah.
It was challenging, but I definitely can see myself if that situation arose again, when I get married, for the final time, if she already has kids, I definitely know how to position myself and be able to, be that step parent.
Yeah. So for me, I don't like the phrase stepchildren. When people ask me how many kids you have, I just tell them the number of kids that I have. And sometimes you get the reaction from other brothers, I'll be like, I got 6 kids. Like, damn, this is a lot of kids.
Right.
And if the conversation continues, depending on how comfortable we are with each other, then I'll say, well, I have 4 kids that are my biological children through 2 marriages. And then I have 2 kids from my wife who had children because she was married before we got together.
Right.
I even hate saying the word stepchildren because I never want to be the stepdad, if that makes sense. But technically, that's my situation. And I think there's a lot of challenges. And that's why a lot of men say they won't date a woman with children and vice versa. So going right into it, what's different from the way you treat your biological children versus the way you treat your stepchildren in a relationship where you were married before?
So, I think it's just for me, there's certain demands up front with my kids, yes, sir, no, sir, please, thank you, language, stuff like that. How my dad raised me, you're not going to lay around. If you didn't work overnight, You're gonna be out of the bed before 8, 9 o'clock. Like you're not gonna just lay around all day. And so the challenge has been having that balance, because I feel like if I'm gonna be a bonus parent, I have to still bring a level of value to being a bonus parent.
Right.
And so a part of that is I have to be able to impart something on you. And so it was a young man that was my stepson. And so I felt like it was my job to take him from where he was, because his dad wasn't in his life. It was my job.
You're a full-time dad at that point, right?
Right.
And you're
full-time.
the dad.
I'm the dad.
And how old was he?
He was 13.
Okay.
But and also another thing is, again, it's innate that my kids, they love me. I'm dad, or whatever. I'm never Ladre under any circumstances, unless I asked them what my name is and stuff like that. But when it comes to the step or bonus child, you kind of have to let them ease into that. What would you like to call me? You can call me Mr. Gilbert. You can call me Mr. Dre. You can call me Mr. Ladre.
It's so awkward.
Yeah, never Ladre.
Right.
Now we're going to have that, at least that respect, but it's going to be Mr. something. I'm going to take my time to get to know you and make you comfortable, so that you allow me to be in your life the way that because you already have a dad. We're going to develop a unique relationship that you're comfortable with at your pace. And if I had not been a mentor, I wouldn't have even known how to even develop that type of relationship with a bonus child.
Right. Even when it comes to something as simple as whether they call you, it's weird. And at the same token, you're marrying mom, everything's good, you love mom, you automatically feel a certain way about them. You have to be there and not in their lives, and you're going to step into that role. But are you quite dad yet? Did they call you that early on?
I was raised with my stepfather. My biological father was out in Vegas. I almost never saw him. I didn't see him for 15 years, 17 years, something like that. So I was raised primarily by my stepfather.
How old?
I was young. I was 7, 6, somewhere in that area.
You came in early, yeah.
But it was weird calling him dad or father. I would call him Pops. I ended up calling him Pops. But
yeah,
I agree. It is strange calling him dad or father, because it's not. I would call him Pops. But he's the guy that taught me to play basketball. He's the one who taught me how to talk to girls. He's the one who taught me everything. All the stuff a father's supposed to tell you.
Yeah.
He's the guy that did it. So as far as I'm concerned, he is my father. When it's time to retire, when it's time to... He needs a place to stay. He needs old folks home or whatever. Like, I'm going to be the one that's going to take care of him and be there for my stepfather.
Yeah.
Because technically he's my father. He's the one who's taught me everything. I love him just like a father. But I agree with you. It is strange calling him dad. Because like I said, even though he is my dad, he's always done that stuff.
And at the time, again, you're already 7. You knew enough, or you have enough of your own agency at that point to recognize what was what. And you knew that he wasn't your dad. He came into your life, but then he became your dad.
Yeah.
So it's strange for me, because the same thing in my last relationship where I had a stepdaughter, she called me Papi, the way Haitians would call their dads. So it was like a term of endearment, because it was like, well, you're not going to call me Stefan. And now in my current marriage, my oldest stepdaughter, she calls me Pop. For her, it was innate. She's very smart. I came into her life when she was 18 years old. It's strange for her to call me anything different. But my son calls me Steph, like his mother calls me Steph. It's one of those things, but I did not impose that law. We never really had the conversation. It was just like, it's what developed. And I got to tell you, man, honestly, there's like I've always felt a certain way about it, but if I'm being completely vulnerable here, I kind of feel like it's one of those things where it's been 3 years. Have I earned those stripes yet? But then even when you do earn those stripes, even when you get to that point where, and I feel like I have, but even then, how do you change something that's just been that he's so accustomed to? It's not disrespectful. He treats me like, his dad he's around, he's there, but he's not really involved. For all intents and purposes, I'm dad. Now it would be weird. I don't know how to transition from that, what's been done, what's been laid out, And by the way, it was one of those situations too where me and his mom, we got together and we were married within 9 months. There wasn't a whole lot of transitioning. Right. There wasn't a lot of getting used to me. It was just like, boom, I met him. 3 months later, me and mom were engaged. 6 months later, we were married.
Does he want to change that, or do you want to change that? Is that like a ego thing for you? Like, I want him to call me dad because I'm doing all the dad stuff, or is it something that he desires to do? He wants to call you Steph because he sees you as Steph, or do you want him to see you as a dad and that's why you want that title?
The latter, if I'm being super honest.
Okay.
I kind of feel like I've earned it, and I feel like no matter what happens, right, no matter what he calls me, I'm going to continue to earn that.
So is forcing that transition necessary?
I don't know. I don't know that it is. I remember one time, for instance, I had to go to his school. There was a teacher there, and she asked him, she goes, Is that your dad? And he goes, yeah, that's my stepdad. He didn't say it with any kind of malice. He's a very super literal, matter-of-fact kid.
But you felt something.
It hurt me.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, fuck, I hated that.
Right.
You know, and I just want dad. Like, that distinction makes no difference to the teacher in that moment. She doesn't care about whether or not, it's a biological. She just needs to know, are you the parent? Really is all she wants to know. But he was answering the question literally. And again, he didn't mean anything by it. But that's what I felt in that moment. And this was still early on in the relationship. This is like a year in.
Do those breakups hurt in terms of like, I'm separating from the mom. I'm no longer responsible for you and your mom. You're now going to be out of my life. Like, you not only lose the woman, but you're going to lose the child as well when y'all separate.
It's devastating, man.
Absolutely.
It is, because you're losing a child and now again, it depends on how long the child was in your life.
But even then you don't have any legal.
No, of course not. No, there's no legal
in her life.
Right. So it depends on how long the kid was in your life. It depends on how old the kid is at that point. Let's say you come into a situation, right? The kid is 5, 6, 7 years old, like your situation with your dad. 15 years later, mom and dad are not together anymore. They go their separate ways. You have a relationship that was forged for a long time. You decide to keep that relationship. But if at 20 something years old, you decide, I don't want to keep that relationship. It's a choice. I'm sure he's going to break his heart, but it's a choice that you have, and he's not going to force that on you. So to me, I look at it like the kid's own agency at that point. Do they make that decision to say, yeah, you're not with my mom anymore, so I'm going to like fall back a little bit? I haven't been so ingrained in those children's lives that much, but it will still hurt if I weren't in their lives anymore.
Another scenario. You said 5, 7 years old, somewhere in that area, and you're with this lady for 5 years. Child's now 10. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily have their own agency. They're still dependent on their mother for life. At that point, you're erased from their life. Mm-hmm. That relationship hurts.
Yeah, it hurts.
Like, you can still maintain it when they're 20, 19, 18.
Sure.
But
and then you ask, I didn't then, a couple of decades ago, whatever, but I now have the maturity, like this were to happen, where I recognize that I can just speak to my ex and say, hey, I very much would like to be in, his life. I'd like to continue our relationship. Like you and I, we have nothing going on. But I think that the kind of women that I'm used to dealing with, they would see that and not turn that away. This is me just being an extra mentor, an extra support for their kids. So in that sense, I don't think that would be turned away. But then again, I don't know, because my wife is almost like, she's also the kind of person, she's like, if I'm done with you, I'm done with you. So yeah, but I don't know that, I guess I'd have to ask her. I don't know that if we were to like part ways, I don't know that she would say, don't talk to my kids. I think she would be like, it's up to them. I'm not going to facilitate it.
If she moved on to another relationship, would she be interested in maintaining?
Probably not.
That relationship?
Probably not. But she can't move to another relationship. If I'm gone, she's done.
Would you recommend for young men to be willing to be stepfathers? Like you got some maturity, you got some seasoning on you, right? You can probably handle it. Yeah. Would you say, Nick, go be a stepdad?
Man, wait, let's think through this, right? Mm-hmm. It's a very, very tough thing to do, right? So it depends on what they have. It depends on, is everything else, is all of the other boxes, are they checked? And then to me, that's when we can address the whole, can you walk into somebody else's life and decide to step into the shoes? What is that relationship with her ex? Is he involved? Is he not involved? I find that as a man, it's a lot easier for me when he's not that involved.
Right.
When you first enter a relationship as a man, you're like, I need that dude out of here. But then when you think through it and you think about the children themselves, you're just like, if it helps them, then you're thinking, if you put them first, then you don't think like that anymore. So to answer your question, would I recommend it? I don't know that I could. Everything else would have to be checked because it's such a hard thing to do. How you discipline is totally different.
Do you think that's right, though?
It's not.
The way I'm going to discipline my kids and how I'm going to discipline someone else's kids, I understand that that's going to be different.
Yeah.
But should it be?
It shouldn't be.
Because they're all your responsibility.
But there's something subconscious about that. I know there's sometimes when you're in a relationship, the woman will say, no, you don't touch my kid. You don't say this. You don't say that. I discipline him. You don't, whatever. That's not our situation. So it's not her, right? It's not him. He's never made me feel that type of way where you're not my dad. You don't get to do this. That's not what it is. But there's always been, my own restrictions that were self-imposed. My wife needed to trust me, even though we've kind of fast forwarded through this relationship and we've been together only 3 years and we got married pretty quickly. But there was a lot of conversations. One of the first questions she asked me, how is your relationship with your children? That was her measuring stick. Because if I was like, well, I don't really fuck with him, I don't talk to him that much, blah, blah, or whatever it is. Well, my kids hate me, or my son's all right, but my girls, man, whatever. No.
Let me tell you, man, have you ever been a step parent before?
No, he's like 12.
How old are you, Nick?
27.
So, man, let me tell you, in the words of the great Andre 3000, he said, don't do it. Reconsider. Read some literature on the subject. You sure? Fuck it. But yeah, man, like if you can avoid that as a 43-year-old man, I would tell that's going through that. I would tell you to avoid it. But at the same time, Stefan makes a fantastic point. I know some gentlemen that are in their 70s, 80s, that they came into their wives' lives and they had 2 kids, 3 kids. And that man has, that's the pride of his life, is the fact he was able to raise those children. Mm-hmm. So it's like, obviously that woman that he married, she checked off all the boxes. So, I mean, like, I would say don't take on that responsibility if you feel like you're still lacking something in the relationship or you're not getting what you need out of the relationship, because that's going to be a lot.
Hell, he's got to check boxes. She's got to check boxes too, but he's got to check the boxes because, again, if you're going to walk into someone's life who has a child or 2, right, and you're going to become stepdad, it's with their lives that she's trusting you with.
But Steph, I think that's what I'm saying. Like the fact that he has to check boxes, that's like added pressure.
Exactly.
You get what I'm saying?
Women don't want to be with you unless you check boxes.
Yeah.
So
it's
women won't even get with you in the first place unless you check off.
We have enough boxes we have to check innately, but like when it comes down to kids, like the fact that you have to check boxes as it relates to the kids, that's just like added pressure that you don't have to deal with.
It's true.
You know, so just a thought.
So you might as well just not do it at all.
What I would say about that is it's not that you shouldn't do it at all. It's that you shouldn't correct somebody's mistake. If there's a woman and she has 4 baby fathers, 5 kids, all of them are in jail, you shouldn't correct those mistakes and try and.
Everybody agrees.
Yeah, absolutely. I think she would agree.
If she's a bad mom,
there's a limit.
She's messy and dirty, and she just needs somebody to come in and pay the bills so she can continue being messy and dirty. You shouldn't correct her mistakes, But if you have somebody, she's a good woman. Her husband was in the military. He died in Iraq. The kids are good. She's responsible. You could step into those type of situations and add to it.
But if she's a decent woman, she just keep getting pregnant by the wrong dude.
Well, nah, there's no such thing.
No, there's no such thing.
There's no such thing.
Wait a minute, man. What happened to all the checking the boxes? That's a
no, that's what I'm saying. It's like you can't keep getting pregnant by the wrong man. There's something about you that's attracting that. The problem is you, like you said. Don't fix somebody else's mistakes, right?
That's a great point.
You have to work on yourself, figure that out. I'm not supposed to be walking into that situation to fix any of that.
Right.
The ideal thing is to start your own family from scratch.
Yes, sir.
But chances are you're going to run into 1 or 2 that's a good girl, but she's going to have a child.
And then you look at how she raises her own kids, because I would look at that. How do you raise your own kids, with or without me, right?
Yeah.
So I have a question, right? This is for all you guys. So what if she's already in a relationship?
What do you mean?
So what if?
Because I'm not there.
No. Watch what I'm saying. Now check this out. What if you meet the lady? Mm-hmm. She has, let's just say, a son, and that is her man. I know y'all running the situation like that,
son,
right?
husband.
Where her son is her man, and you are literally competing with this guy.
I'm not. No. So to me, that's an easy that's an easy answer too. That's a super easy answer.
Yeah, but I'm saying like the boxes. We're talking about check boxes, right? She checks all these boxes.
She should check that one, because that's what I'm saying. That's
right.
The biggest box that you need to check. So if you understand that is your son, that is not your husband.
That's right.
I'm your husband. I get to take that place. I get to be that person. I get to be number one. And I understand that he's your baby boy. I understand there's no higher love, but in the hierarchy of things, I get to be the man of the house. I get to be that person. I get to step into his life and serve him as well as I serve you. So many things are wrong with that, but I regret this. I regret it to this day, but I was that way for my mom. When my mom and dad divorced, she had opportunities to date other men. And I stood firm on, nope.
No business.
I stood in the way of everything. But I will tell you back then that my spoiled little self was that dude that if a man came into her life, that I would probably give them a super hard time.
That's not cute either, man.
No, there's nothing about it.
Like, and even for like little girls, bro. Like I was dating this lady. Her kids were like mad disrespectful. And the reason I say is because I couldn't imagine. Like, I know if my kids saw me with another woman, they may or may not feel like that's not their mom. They may have their feelings, but they know they're gonna be respectful.
Oh, hell yeah.
They may not say anything or give them that welcoming vibe, but they're not gonna say anything. These like the little girls was like being real nasty and real ugly. So as I talked to mom was like, that was a product of their broken relationship with their father and stuff like that. But I got to a point where we had to have a talk. I'm like, listen. She expected me to like get down on their level. I'm not dealing with that. Like you have to, at some point, if you're going to date, you need to have a conversation with your kids. You need to let them know and like understand. You got to be respectful, because otherwise, you can't
you end up by
yourself.
Mad. Yeah, cats and dogs. Again, I keep bringing up my wife, but that's one of those. She had a lot of boxes, and they were all checked. One of them was she was married. She had 2 kids with a husband. Didn't work out. She was single for about 10 years. And when she was ready to date, she talked to her children. Before anything got too serious, it was like she would talk to her kids and they would know what's going on. They knew before they met me. That's why I felt also really comfortable that when I was going to marry mom, that I actually went to them first before I even proposed. And I said, hey, this is a conversation I want to have with you guys. So that's a relationship we had established very early on.
From the people that I've interacted with through college, in law school and just in general in life, man, it seems like, in Caribbean culture, like that's more of a, like you guys have that hard stop. As someone from the country, man, it's been a little bit more difficult for me in that sense of being able to have that hard stop. And maybe it's like over time and maturity, and learning how to deal, become more emotionally intelligent. Have had to learn how to like say, you know what, I'm okay.
Yeah,
setting that hard boundary.
I don't think it's cultural. I think it's more generational.
Children turn out better when they're with a father.
100%.
When they're with a father, they just turn out better. For women to say they don't need a man, especially raising children, you're going to raise feminine boys, wild girls. You're going to contribute to the degeneracy of society.
Yeah.
So you need a man in there to give you that stable grounding.
I think the ones who say that, they just don't understand what the role a man plays, probably because they didn't have a dad or they always been raised saying, you don't need a man for this, you don't need a man for that. So
they see the money and the provisioning, but they don't see all the other stuff.
I think a lot of that, man, is just defense mechanism.
Yeah.
You didn't have a man around, so you didn't want to take the time to learn what it means to have a man around, not only just in the actual, the operative sense, but in the essence of having a man around and what that means.
Also, to be totally fair, they haven't had, like you just said, they haven't had the examples. Mm-hmm. They haven't had a good man around, whether it's in the father figure, whether it's the good uncle, or whatever it may be. So if all they're seeing is a bunch of bomb dudes and losers, right, or guys who are absent in the sense that they exist, they know who they are, but they're not stepping up to the plate, they're not really handling their own responsibilities, then it's easier for them to say, rather than me having one of these dudes, because all I know of men is these examples. So no, I don't need a man. And the reality is the great men do exist. So what is it about you now that's going to attract that type of a man?
You don't qualify for them.
So it's not that they are not out there, but you qualify for a real man.
And if you have a son or you have children and you're taking care of your children and she's taking care of her children, she's doing all the things, there still needs to be a man present. It helps build the young lady's self-esteem, the young man. It's just like, I remember one time my dad, I was in the house, man, and he came in and I don't know what I did. My dad came up behind me, say, hey, you walking different now. If you don't straighten it up, I'm gonna knock you back out that door where you walked in. And I'm for the life of me trying to figure out like what changed in my walk. Like what did I do? Right? It's like around 12 or 13. And he was just like, it was, and my mom like, Mom, what's he talking about? She's like, I don't know, boy, but you better figure it out. Like, you better get something. So it's just like little stuff like that. And he and I joked about it, up until, he passed away.
What did he mean?
So what happens is I know this now. It's like a rites of passage. When you get to a certain age, man, your dad is going to start challenging you. He doesn't want you to be timid. He wants you to be resolute. So he's going to continue. He's going to challenge you in ways. It's like WWE. My dad to call me to the mat, and I didn't know what was going on, right? Because my dad was a big, strong guy, and so over time, when I had his battles, he really was trying to get me to kind of come at him in a sense. But he wanted to see, like, he was pushing me to see how I was going to respond. And then later when we got older, like I had kids and stuff like that, he was telling me, he was like, son, you're a hothead, man. I remember the first time I got my first gun, he's like, yeah, son, I always pray that you never got a gun because I know that you were hot. And I'm thinking to myself like, now, he's observed that about me, but he kept, he was kept kind of pushing me, but that's just kind of like the maturation process of stepping into manhood. It's those small, subtle, intangible things that a man brings to the table, whether it be for a young boy or for a young girl, and help them to be able to develop. And you can definitely tell that a man's been there when they have gotten that presence and had the opportunity to operate like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you this about my son. My son's mother will let him give up if it gets hard, if it gets tough. I won't let him give up. Mm-hmm. Just like you were saying with like carrying grocery bags and things like that, she'll end up taking the bag from him, just walking in and saying, okay, we'll come to the kitchen. I'll tell my son, no, boy, carry these groceries, get them up there. If I know he can handle it, I'm going to make him handle it.
Right.
Even though he's young. And that's the difference. Women will let you give up, especially with boys. They'll baby them.
Yeah, I mean, we do the same thing with girls. It is the same thing with their boys. I know for sure that my ex with my son, she's the same way. But yeah, have you ever been sidelined in a situation where, as a co-parent, there was anything that needed to be handled, whether it's a decision to be made or something that needed to be handled on behalf of the child, whether it was school or some kind of disciplinary action, where you would just like checked and kind of put in your place?
Absolutely. So my stepson would go to spend time with her family during the breaks. I remember one time we were actually on a trip together. She asked me, she wanted to stay an extra day. I mean, it's more money. I mean, I'm ready to go home now. Like, I'm ready to get back in my bed, but I made the arrangements. And then the next day she woke up like, oh, I need to go get my son. But you said that you wanted to stay. No, I need to go get my son right now. And I was like, I'm sure it'll be okay another day. Like, 'cause I'm looking at my wallet at this point, like, hey man, like I spent a little bit of money for us to stay. She was like, no, I need to go get him right now. And I was like, you know what?
What was the reason for that?
Who knows, man? What she told me was he was ready to come home like right then.
Okay, that was and it's not like he was in danger or anything.
No, he wasn't. But it was like, hey, I'm ready to leave now. Me personally, I mean, he's with his family. I feel like he'll be okay another 24 more hours. Sure. But that's when I learned very early on in our marriage, when he called, she would drop everything, which is another thing I want to talk about. I don't know how we're going to fit that in, but
go ahead.
She dropped everything. But like in the biblical sense, right? So the Bible says when a man and woman become married, they leave their parents and they cleave and become one flesh. Hierarchy is God, your spouse, and then your children come afterwards. Mm-hmm. But when you start talking about step or bonus children, right? Mm-hmm. Does it immediately become that way? Is that something that happens over time? Is that something that never even happened? Because, for example, I was home with her and I was talking to her, her uncle who was like her dad. And I said, hey, I'm going to love her in the way the Bible says I'm supposed to love her. Like, I'm going to forsake all others. I'm going to put her like, God, her, and my children. He's like, you're a damn fool if you do. You better love your children. Put no damn woman over your children. Your children come first, and the hell with that. He's talking about his niece, like the hell with that woman. And so that kind of like threw me off, because I was like, wow. I was like, okay. I've heard people say that since then.
So I used to be that way.
Yeah.
Probably one of the reasons that second marriage didn't work. Mm-hmm. And it's because it's a choice I made, because that's just the way I thought about it. That's just the way it should be. So to me, this is not a biblical thing at all. It's just the way that there's certain things that you just develop on your own, or you tend to develop your own philosophies. It's just what feels right. Mm-hmm. So for me, what feels right and what feels totally natural, and I would never change this now, is my wife definitely comes first. And the reason that is, you have to have a different relationship. So with my children, each relationship is different. I just have different experiences. But one thing that I know for 100% certain is that the choice that I made and the choice that my wife made for us to be together, that was a choice, right? I didn't birth her. She didn't birth me. We made a choice to be together. We made a commitment. If there's someone that I expect to be by my side, and we talked about this in several episodes, where if you can't do for yourself, will that person do for you? It's my wife, as I will do for her.
Right.
So I have to put her first, because I expect in the natural order of things that my children will leave me. Right. Not in the sense I don't see me, but they are moving on. They're going to go have their own families. Yeah. I expect fully for my daughter to have a husband and say, hey, as much as I love my daddy, I'm all about my daddy, but he's got to come first. And that makes sense to me.
I wish Madison would. Go ahead. I wish you would.
But see, to me, that makes sense. Like, and I'm not saying in the sense that we're changing subject a little bit here, but say, for instance, there is something where I'm just like, I need my daughter to do this. And the husband's like, no, do that. Guys, I mean, we could open that box if you want to, but you need to do what your husband said to do.
That's right. Yeah.
I'll step in when it is an abusive relationship. Like she needs to blink twice. Now, okay, we got 23 acres. I got plenty of places to bury him.
Yes, sir.
Right? So that's a different story.
Yes, sir.
That hierarchy that you're talking about, biblically, that's why that exists, because exactly what you said, your children are going to leave you. They're going to go on. They're going to start their own lives. In the end, it's going to be you and your wife.
Correct.
You started with you and your wife. It should end with you and your wife. So your wife or your spouse is supposed to be the next person after God. A lot of women don't understand that, and they do want to put their children there.
But
Right.
switching gears, we all have children. This is inevitable. Your ex is going to end up being with someone else if she's not already. How do you navigate through that, knowing that there's going to be another person who's going to step in and parent your child?
That's a tough one. I'm not going to lie. I don't mind. I know she can't be alone forever, so I don't mind her being with somebody, but someone else like stepping in and being around my son, like living with him and all that, I don't think I'm ready to accept that yet. That's going to be the hardest thing for me, knowing that there's going to be another person there probably just trying to have talks with him or just try to do anything that I should be doing. I'm going to have a tough time with that. Just keeping it a buck with you.
You will. Yeah. There's nothing you can do about it.
It's nothing, yeah. So that's why I I'll be accepting, like, all right, this is what come with it. I didn't marry her. It's still tough. I think it's a pride thing or something. I don't know.
It's pride. There's an emotional tightrope there. But yeah, there's so many things to be concerned about. There's a million things. And they're not just hypotheticals. Number one, is that child safe? Because let me tell you, people can mask a lot. And so if my ex decides she's going to be with someone, I have a 9-year-old little girl. So that's really scary to me. Yeah. So I have to think about that. Not a damn thing I can do about it. So I have to trust that this person that I was with at one point, is that person putting the child first at every turn, or are they putting their needs first in that sense? We just talked about us being step-parents, stepdads, and coming in to discipline a child. Earlier on in the show, I said, I got to come in thinking that there are certain things that I just don't even think about doing when it comes to my stepson. I love him the same, but I have to have these restrictions. I have to think about that and go, let me slow myself down. But when I know that there is another father involved, I take a beat. I take an extra 5 seconds and I rethink my actions.
The problem with being a stepdad to me is, for one thing, you could lose the kids. But another thing is you have the responsibility of taking care of these children, providing for them, keeping a roof over their head, and making sure that they're safe and cared for, right? So you have the responsibility, but not all the time do you have the authority to guide them in the way that you're supposed to, right? So responsibility without authority, that's a problem for me. That is slavery to me. Giving somebody else the authority over my children is a hard thing. Most men, I don't think, want to do that.
Yeah.
Because we understand it may or may not be the way we would do it. I would be a hypocrite to say that I want the authority to deal with somebody else's children, but no one can have the authority to deal with mine.
Right.
I would be okay with somebody else disciplining my son, but I would feel some type of way about it.
Obviously, it would matter what style of discipline they impose, right? We're not talking about...
I would want it to be as close to what I would do as possible.
Right.
If I would have popped him and gave him a good talking to, then I would expect him to get popped and get a good talking to. But if he's, locked in a room and has bleach poured over him or something like that, then yeah, I would have a problem with that.
Then we got 23 acres to bury him in.
Yeah.
So Nick, he just said it, like, right? If he'd be okay with doing it, are you okay with the stepdad doing it?
Not yet. I'm not there yet.
He can't do it.
I'm not there yet. Probably like I might change my mind when I get older and when he get older, but right now I can't do it. Yeah.
You know what happens to lions when they take over a pride?
So they
Do they kill off the offspring?
They kill all the offspring.
Yeah.
Right? That's actually a common thing in mammals. Like when you take over a group, when a male takes over another group and he kills all the other children and then mates with the females and makes his own children, right?
Yeah.
In humans, the way it manifests is a stepdad will come in and they'll actually abuse the children. So they'll beat them, they'll molest them, things like that. It manifests in those ways. Immediately, that's where your mind goes to, that my children are going to be abused because they're not his children.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
So if we go back to the previous side of the conversation, watching my steps, watching my mouth, acting a certain way, because again, I don't want him to feel you're not my dad. That's why you act that way.
Let me ask y'all this. In order to step into the situation where you want to be step parents, where you want to mentor and guide children, what are some of these boxes that need to be checked off in terms of like what the mom's coming in with?
Dre, if you want to go, but I've got a couple for sure.
Because I've heard you say this time and time again about checking the boxes. So I actually want to hear from you and learn from you, like how you evaluate it.
So it goes back to what I talked about before when I said there has to be a perfect balance of her desire to have you in her life and her need to be in her life. Meaning I need to come in and see how she interacts with these kids. Are these kids rambunctious? Are they running wild? Are they educated? Are they cultured? Are they well-mannered? When I met them, they're not rude. They're respectful. They do what they're supposed to do. You can ask for a better situation. She didn't need me to come correct some little wild benchies running around, right? So that was one of the boxes. Are you able to raise them on your own? Are you doing a good job to where what you need now is a male presence? Secondly, even financially, you're able to take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of your household, take care of your children. You didn't need me. It wasn't like, hey, they were living in the dark and I showed up and chased all the roaches away and paid the bill finally. That's not what happened. Her house is a whole lot nicer than mine and bigger than mine, right?
You doing all right.
I came in, it was just like, okay, everything was already there. One of the boxes is, what's your relationship like with the ex? Is it something I'm going to feel that boundaries are being crossed? There was nothing toxic. Hardly ever talk. There's no relationship that's continuing, but they're also not at each other's throat. When they talk, it's something as simple as like whatever it is that he needs, but it's a simple civil conversation.
Were the exes ever like a concern for you? Because statistically, when women
I haven't had
leave their husbands,
yeah,
they usually go back to an ex, like their children's father or an ex-boyfriend or something like that. Have exes ever been a concern for you in terms of?
No, because I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little full of myself, but I never worried about that.
You that guy. You that guy.
No, that's not a real concern. But again, was it fresh? Was there a wound with a scab on it that can still get picked at? No, I mean, her shit had been done and over with for almost 10 years before I even showed up. So I wasn't worried about that. In my previous relationship, it's the same thing. She had been over and done with.
What he's telling you without saying it is there's a statute of limitations on the ex. The ex has had to be out of the picture for about a year.
And I never actually thought about it, but you're right. It kind of worked out that way.
Right.
But I think that to me, even if it had been like, oh, it's only been a year, but I don't look at the time so much. I look at what is that dynamic? What is that relationship like? If you need to show a little cry on, are you calling? Oh, I can get you on the phone, but hey, we're still buddies. So I get to call him and cry about this or whatever. And then he'll listen because he's still a friend. I never had to worry about that.
And if I did, a red flag for you?
Fuck yeah, it would have been a red flag. I would have been gone.
Right.
You still talk to your ex. You still cordial with them. We can't do this. Okay.
No, look, I want you to be cordial with him, especially the children involved. Because if there's a situation, something happens to my son, we're in the hospital, I would expect the other dude to be there. He's going to show up. I would expect that.
Right.
We don't need to be fighting in the waiting room. There's a bigger picture. There's a bigger thing we need to be concerned about. That's my thing. He's going to go into doing something wonderful, graduating college, winning an award, being recognized for something big. You want everyone to be there. That's the extent of it. I don't need to tell you what to do in that sense. If you haven't figured it out yet, then you're not ready to be in a relationship, at least not with me.
Right.
What if he's like a funny guy? He makes her laugh and, everything's best friends. And all.
Then they're going to end up back together, man. Because that's exactly how that works. I'm funny.
Women and men.
I'm funny too. I know how that works.
Yeah.
Right? I've made a lot of jokes.
They cannot be friends.
Hey, but Nick, I wanted to say something to you, man. But I have like a 3-prong approach, right, that I initiate when it comes down to trying to make sure that the gentleman that comes into my kid's life because my ex has moved on, that we kind of follow, right? The first thing is I've been blessed in the sense of the mother of my children. She's a very sound mind, level-headed, I would just say by her nature, a cautious person, right? So I know that if there's a man that's being brought around our children, then I can trust that she is making a decision based on, like she has vetted this guy.
Biggest blessing in the world. Keep going. Right there. That is right there is the biggest blessing. That I can trust you that you will do what's right by them.
Right.
Go ahead.
And then I know that she's going to when that time comes, she's going to keep me fully aware, hey, I've got a relationship that's progressed to this point. That's my first approach, is the communication, understanding about that. The second thing about it is that now as a dad, not saying that I was lax before, but I got to make sure I'm really present now, because I want my kids to understand that, like, and I want him to understand. Now, this is where the ego comes in. Mm-hmm. Like, bro, I know what you're saying. Now, listen now. You know, my ex and I are not together, so I understand why you're here, but you're not needed, you know, because dad is here. You know, like he's not here in the sense of the boyfriend or the husband or that anymore, but dad is here. I'm here for my kids, and my kids know that. And the third thing is we will definitely have to have a conversation about levels of expectation. And I'd ask him, you know, I'd come out and ask him, I'd say, you know, hey, how do you discipline kids, or what do you think about that? It's not just someone else's kids, because I have friends and frat brothers. Like, one of my frat brothers was telling me, man, he's married to this lady and her ex is not here. His ex is not around. So he puts his hands on this kid, and he doesn't have kids. I mean, he fights this kid, like beats this kid, and he brags about it. Yeah, I had to kick his ass. I had to put a foot in his ass. I'm like,
the fuck?
Like, bro, that's not, that's somebody else's child, bro. You're somebody else's kid. Yeah. And I had another friend of mine, man, one of my homeboys from FAM, man, back in undergrad. He doesn't have any kids, but he tells me all the time, like, yeah, man, I had to go upside a little boy head, man. He got to understand, you know, what's going on. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I have kids and I don't operate like that. So I would definitely want to have a conversation with this guy about my expectations of, like, look, bro, I don't put my hands on my kids, right? I try to avoid at all costs. I've only spanked my daughter twice. I've only spanked my son twice, right? And it broke my heart to do it, not because I don't want to discipline them. It's because of me personally. When I was growing up, that's all my parents knew. My parents were 40 years older than me, so it was straight roots. Anytime I got in trouble, it was straight roots, bro. It was roots.
Is that a fair position to put him in, though?
What do you mean?
Like giving this dude the responsibility and the authority of keeping a roof over their heads and make sure they got food and everything every night, but saying they're not allowed to whoop them?
Well, first of all, that's not his responsibility. That's mine. My kids can always come stay with me. There's going to be a roof over their head regardless. So it's not that he's needed in that sense. And I would basically let him know, like, hey, you know, like, I don't put my hands on my kids. So, you know, if there comes down to an instance where you need to discipline them, like I said, dad is active, dad is here. Now listen, if they're being disrespectful to their mom, if they look like they're about to bow up at you or bow up at mom, you do what a man does. But when it comes down to if their room's not clean, or if they say something, or, you know, miss curfew, don't do chores, nah, bro, you keep your hands to yourself, take a cell phone, but you putting your hands on my kids is going to cause a problem.
This is where you guys kind of disagree. But again, you're coming from a hypothetical situation because you don't know it.
What would you allow somebody to do for your children?
What do you mean, like, do for them?
His overall responsibility is he's going to pay the bills. The lights got to be on, the power, all that type of stuff, right? The general thing to take care of him. Little Timmy wants to play football.
Okay.
He wants a PlayStation 5, you know? And this dude, if he provides those things for him, you know, should he have some say in it?
Absolutely. Well, let me just say this. That's the point of
he
having...
He paid for football camp, right?
That's only because dad, you know, he swiped before, but dad probably zelled him the money afterwards because dad going to make sure he get paid. But no,
what if you say, hey, I don't want him to play football. I want him to play basketball.
Well, you know what I mean.
He's living in my house, though. He's going to play football. Huh.
Well, no, we won't do that now. Because here's the thing. That's where you go to the legal standpoint. The decisions about what the child does and does not do, those type of decisions, those are made by biological parents. So he can't not make my son play football if I say he doesn't want to play. And so that me and mom have to work that out.
There's a parenting plan through the divorce, and those things are hashed out. Hopefully you never need to go out and pull that piece of paper because we have conversations. At the end of the day, again, we both want to see that child win.
But I want to go back to what you're saying, G, because you're making a great point, and I want to make sure I address that. I'm not going to tell this guy, if my son raises up at you, you can't do what a man's supposed to do. If my daughter is being disrespectful toward her mom and she's, you know, getting an attitude and she's just being nasty with her mom, you can't, you know, I'm not telling him that. All I'm saying is, look, bro, I come from a generation where my dad told everybody that he dropped me off with, they had free range to beat my ass. I'm talking about my Boy Scout troop leader. And I'm like, Daddy, this man white. This man white. Yeah, I'm like, this man white.
He beat different.
Right. Right.
That's how it used to be, though. You walk through a neighborhood and Miss Jenkins, she could beat you, and then just.
That's where I grew up. But I'm gonna tell you how deep it got. Like I said, my dad told my Boy Scout troop leader that he could beat my ass. He told my high school baseball coach that I'm dropping him off with you. You can beat my dad told my college coach, if he gets out of line, you can beat his ass. And I'm looking at my dad like, you can't beat my ass no more. Damn straight to beat my ass. But I'm just saying, like, that's the mentality. Yeah. So I just, like I tell you, man, my parents believed in that roots type beatings. And I don't want that for my kids, because I fall for that scripture. Like when it says, parents, bring not your sons or daughters to wrath. Like you're supposed to, like, and I know that you're supposed to not. People say spare the rod, spoil a child. I don't believe that's literally you got to beat them with anything, because I'm telling you, man, that I'm talking about my own self and things that I've had to. Like, I got in more fights in college than I ever did in middle school, high school. I went to college fighting.
Why?
Because I got my ass beat all the way up until I was a certain age. Yeah. So when I got to college, it was just like, and I was in high school, I was so afraid of my dad, because he would beat my ass, like he would get down, right? And so when I got to college, right, real quick, found out, this is a whole nother thing, but I found out 2 days before my high school graduation, I was adopted. I had no idea. So
wow,
you talk about, like, I go from like this guy over here is beating me like he wants me to play. I'm supposed to plow a field for him or something, like I'm a rented mule. And then I'm like, wait a minute, but he didn't tell me I was adopted. So I went to college, but I was angry. And it's my part of my own trauma that I have to deal with, that I just don't want to cross that line with my son or my kids, or have my kids think of me as somebody that just beats on them, especially when I live in Atlanta and I see them during breaks, or I see them periodically.
So basically the bottom line is, when a step-parent steps into your biological child's life,
right,
number one, you're blessed in the sense that the mother of your children is the right type of person, has the right mindset, and puts the kids first, so you don't have too much to worry about there.
Absolutely.
Secondly, you want to be introduced to this person because you want to see who's going to be in your kid's life.
Right.
And that's fair. I would expect that to be kind of like the norm. And thirdly, if there is to be any kind of punishment, there's a limit to what can be inflicted upon that child. Anything beyond taking the phone away, time out, or anything like that, you need a phone call.
Right, because I'm reasonable.
I'll put it this way. I got a little girl. She's 9. That's the only kid who could be in a situation where she'd have a step parent. I'm kind of like Nick in that sense, man. She's got a little mouth on her. She'll talk back. She'll challenge you or whatever. Very, very smart. Again, it's my oldest 2.0. They're the same kid. So I look at that and I go, yeah, I don't need you to beat on her, because punishment works. For you to get to the point where you felt like you needed to pull a belt or whatever and physically harm her, yeah, we're gonna, like you said, man, we're gonna have a problem. We got a big problem. That's me personally. I just need a say in it. I just need to know that you can't just decide that you're going to arbitrarily just decide you're going to inflict punishment in a way that I would not agree with.
Right.
Because then that's going to be an issue for me.
What would you do about it?
What would I do about it?
Yeah.
I don't know. How about I just say that on the show?
No, that's fair. That's fair.
So I have responsibilities, man. My responsibilities goes beyond my own personal safety or well-being. My responsibilities to my wife and to my children. And as a protector, I need to be able to do that. And I will not be encumbered when it comes to handling business. All right.
Hey, he had a moment there, man. He stuck in the matrix for a second.
Yeah, man. I kind of froze up there because I had to think about. I'm a visual person. I started thinking about shit. So, rapid fire questions. Are you dad or are you just mom's husband?
Well, as the son, I'll say as the son, I always call my mom's husband the husband. Like some people be like, you mean your stepdad? I'm like, no, that's my mom's husband.
Right.
Really?
Yeah. But I think that's just something wrong with me. I kind of.
So let me ask you a question. Your situation is something wrong with me. So your situation is your mom's remarried?
Yeah.
Okay. And you don't say my stepdad?
No, I never said anything with
How old were you when he came into your life?
So I was grown. Like,
okay.
In my 20s, yeah.
Oh, yeah, shit. That's my mom's husband, too, bro.
Right.
Yeah.
It feel weird saying anything with dad.
Yeah. I kind of get it.
Yeah, my stepdad was just dad.
Period.
For me, yeah.
You were, again, 7 when he came into your life.
Yeah,
that's dad. How about making peace with not being in control? This question is for you mostly, Nick. Because you sure as hell ain't in control.
Yeah. It's a process. I think one day, maybe.
But what are you doing about it? Like, okay, so one day, we know time, for the most part, heals all wounds. We know that you're going to get there. But what are you actively doing to get there? After this conversation today, I know you have to be thinking about, what do I do to get to this point? Because the more you prolong the beef or whatever it is, the more you give into it, the more you react, the more you prolong your own agony, right?
Yeah.
And inevitably and directly causing your own son to suffer.
I'm not doing anything really. Like, well, the beef with her, like if she starts something, the betting app Underdog, I'll just send her my Underdog link. It's just in the middle of an argument. And then she stopped talking. But like other things, like to accept.
What? I'm
so
sorry.
the gambling app Underdog.
Sure.
You send a link to someone to sign up, you get a little $75 bonus. So when she's talking trash, I just send her that link.
So you send her some money?
No, I send her the link to sign up so I could get some money.
I don't get it.
So
it's a troll thing.
I just troll her like, go ahead, sign up for that. So
so you could be quiet.
So I could put some parlays.
So I don't want to be bothered listening to you.
I was like, what's going on? I was so lost. Okay, go ahead.
She don't sign up and she don't say anything else. So I learned like maybe that's the trick. Like, yeah.
You got some work to do.
Yeah.
I do. But what you said about the not having the control thing, I'm not doing anything about that. I feel like over time, I think that might just be an automatic thing if I just accept it.
What I'm telling you is that the secret actually is to not have reactions and to be okay with things. Everything's happening for you, not to you. Count to 5 and then say, okay, what would 40-year-old me do in this situation? Because again, children are not blind. My biggest fear with raising my kids, and the reason I kept fighting, was because I wanted to prove something to them. I wanted them to see that I fought for them. I wanted my kids to know I didn't turn my back. I didn't give up on you. I didn't leave you. I fought for you. I wanted that to be the reality that they embraced, that they knew. I didn't have to do any of that. They would have seen it from my actions. But I felt like I needed to prove something. I needed to be on record. I didn't need to do any of that shit. I just needed to let it go and let God. Last question. If you can give advice to a new stepfather walking into those shoes, what advice would that be?
Man, I always appreciate these questions, man, when you get to this level, because, it invokes a deep level of thought and, very careful analysis. And so what I would say is a brand new stepfather is that take it one day at a time. Same thing I'll tell you, Nick, give yourself some grace. And as you're learning this child and you're developing a relationship with this child, make sure that you do it in a level that's comfortable with them. Try to take your ego out of it. Try to take your personal feelings and emotions out of it. This is a little person that's still learning and growing, and they're still taking in everything. And whether they say it or not, they're going to automatically look at you as an authority figure because you're older. It's not going to be linear. Probably going to be some ups and downs, but just take your time. And over time, if you're consistent and your intentions are righteous and you show up for that child will appreciate you. And then you'll get the reciprocation that it is that you, as a man, the validation through reciprocation that you want. And I truly believe that.
Yeah, I think the biggest reward for you later on as a man is what your father, G, has experienced, which is the acknowledgement from someone like you who's grown into a man and just become your man of your own, has a family of your own, to look back at that man who wasn't your biological dad and say, I owe so much to that person. This person was there for me. That was dad. I think that, to me, that's the biggest reward.
Steph, let me ask you this. Actually, let me ask Nick this. How would you feel about a woman coming into your life and you starting to date somebody else? How would you allow them to interact with your child as a stepmom?
That's a great question.
Would that be an issue for your girl? Well, his mother.
I'm not sure.
How much say would you let her have over your house?
I mean, I think she should have like a voice, but I wouldn't want to step on nobody's toes. So if it's something like certain boundaries, like how I got certain boundaries for the dude that like makes sense, like I wouldn't like go against what she's saying.
I get the impression that you're a reasonable person. You already said she's not reasonable. How much of her requirements are you willing to listen to?
It's like he's in court because he remember what you said about 45 minutes ago.
Yeah,
He's gonna break
or pull the record. He pulled the record on it.
I don't know. I honestly don't know how she would react.
So it's a challenge also for the women coming in. I can tell you that.
What would the women have an issue with another woman coming in?
Hey, I need you to take my son to daycare for me. I got to go to work. Can you take him to daycare?
I feel like that make her life easier.
Bro, first of all, you think that men are territorial, bro?
Yeah.
Women are territorial. It's not even about that trade-off. Yeah, that could make her life easier, but does that give her access to you? And it's that access to you that will kind of bother her. What I've experienced, they want to make sure that you're cut off from that ex, you're cut off from that person, and you're cut off.
You have to change earlier than your mind is ready for, is what we're saying. That's what advice is about. That's why we have the experience, and we're telling you, look, you'll eventually get there, right? But you might get there at 34. You might get there at 35. We're saving you 7 years.
It's going to be painful. I'm not saying that this is going to go smooth and you're not going to feel anything with it. It's going to be painful, but allowing a woman to weaponize your kids against you, you're going to lose more time, more money. You can lose a little bit right now, but you're going to lose more if you allow it to keep happening.
But G, what's the trade-off though? Because what you're saying, and it feeds me and it helps me, but aren't the children suffering for that?
Yes.
Isn't that times you can't get back?
Yes. So
what's the balance?
Chess. This is chess. All right.
Bro says
He's
chess,
the
not
king.
checkers. Yes, sir.
In order for the game to keep going, the king has to be able to function. The king has to be able to keep going.
Right.
For all the other pieces, for the entire kingdom to function, the king has to be okay.
You pretty much said, what's the trade-off? The trade-off is this is time you don't get back. It's a great question, right? And that was my concern. That's what I'm saying. That was my biggest concern. And if I can go back and I would do it again, and there was a crazy condition that was, presented to me in order for me to see my kids, I would say, no, I can't do that.
Okay, so let me go back, G, because what you said, now, you put your context to it. I actually like what you said in that you have to be your optimal self. Mm-hmm. You can't be a good dad if you're scrambling and you're upset and you're emotional and you're all over the place. You're doing a disservice to your kids, because when you're with your kids, you're not going to be able to give them your full. So I get what you're saying in protecting your inner peace and having your stability. That makes a lot of sense. But I think, when we have children, there's an unwritten rule that we have signed a contract that means that we now are going to do things that we normally probably wouldn't do in the first place.
You make sacrifices.
So right. You're gonna make sacrifices. So, for example, like I said, it's not my situation, but I can just see in other situations, where other women have kids, and I observed them and their father their children. I would have never spent 2 minutes with this woman beyond if I was this guy, except for the fact he has kids. So now he has to he has to acquiesce, he has to bend the knee, because that relationship with his children is more important than, him feeling like, I'm not going to go along with whatever she says. And then on the opposite end, I have a friend of mine that said, as long as I make this child support payment every month, that's all I'm required to do. His son now is wild and wide open. His daughter is jumping out of windows and sneaking out. And they're 18, 19, 20. And his son doesn't have any direction, because I was telling him, man, bro, you have a whole lot more responsibility than just sending that check every month, man. You got to spend time. So now he's trying to go at 20 and reprogram all this stuff that's been going on. And there have been other men around. There have been loser, no good, trashy dudes that have been around that have programmed his son and programmed his daughter. They've seen all this stuff. For example, his daughter has seen her mom be in an abusive relationship, those types of things. But now, God has blessed him. And it's so funny, man, he has 3 kids from 7 all the way down to 2 years old. And now they're in the house with him, and he's getting an opportunity to be dad every day. And he comes back, he told me, say, bro, you know what? You're right, man. It made a difference. I can see the difference it makes now that I'm here in the home with my kids every day, as opposed to me just sending a child support check and, not being there.
I'm not advocating that you just send a check and you don't interact with them at all after that.
Yeah.
I'm saying that you do what you're required to do by law, but sitting there and slugging it out with a woman that's clearly trying to manipulate you is not going to be good for you long term.
Sending a check is not parenting. Sending a check is just facing the legal responsibility. But again, when you step in as a parent, you step in as a parent. Basically, you have to do what you have to do.
Pull the pin on the grenade, take everybody to die.
I'm going to find a sound effect just for you, man, just to make sure we have this explosion every time you say that. Guys, this was a great conversation. I think it was very insightful. I think we all got something from it. So earlier today, we did the coin toss. And G, you get to be, who are you going to be again?
I'll try Bernie Mac.
Bernie Mac. Well, go ahead and take us out, bro. Hey, man, just be you.
Lord, have mercy. Please support us by following the show. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for listening, you son of bitches. We'll catch you next week when we share conversations surrounding real issues we deal with every day. Manhood matters. We're out. You son of bitches.
That was awesome, bro.